When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ludlow, and enjoy today's episode. Yeah, I have some friends, that tell me, the 9/11 tower's going down. They were telling me, oh yeah, there are Navy SEALs with dynamite explosive blowing up the Twin Towers. I'm like, are you out of your mind?
That's BS.
It's like, oh yeah. I have friends that said, yeah, if you look at YouTube and you see these angles, and that was actually an Air Force jet flying into the Pentagon. I'm like, come on now, really? That's like, you think the Navy SEALs would be blowing up the Twin? No, come on.
Let me tell you something.
Get a different movie.
I was chief of ops when 9/11 happened, and one of the beauties of CTC, the Counterterrorist Center, is that we had every single federal agency and military represented in our ranks. We had diplomatic security guys, we had Secret Service guys, we had DEA guys, and we had an FAA representative. And when the first plane hit the building, I was standing outside of Cofer Black's office, and I saw this plane in, and I said, God, what an accident. I thought, well, maybe it was a twin engine Cessna or something that went in there into the building. But a couple of minutes later, the guy, I think his last name was White, he comes over, he goes, hey, sir, we have a problem. And I go, what's that? He says, we have 4 aircraft who activated their emergency signal, and none of them are responding. So those were not Air Force aircraft. Those were civilian airliners that FAA was monitoring.
Hey, good point. Very good point. Oh, wow. So basically they have signals that they've given off, and the pilots could not respond to it. Is that clarifying that?
The protocols, at least at that time, was if you were under any kind of threat, like a hijacking, they do have a switch, push the button kind of thing that says, whoa, we have a major problem. And after that, somebody will contact you. And what is your problem? Well, they weren't responding because they had guns to their heads, knives to their throats, whatever. So, yeah.
Like the bank switch. So if we're getting robbed, you hit that bank switch. If you're a banker, we're getting robbed, and the alarm's 911 to get the units deployed, dispatched. Okay, that makes sense. I did not know that. So what's up? How's the U.S. looking to you as far as, we have a lot of security practitioners, people in the security space, EP. How does the industry look to you? Is it going to be a busy year, next couple of years, for needing security services in our country with more civil unrest, geopolitical, COVID stuff? What's your thoughts on all that?
Well, it's a reality that we need more people protecting us. Defunding the police is not a smart option. To me, that's the biggest oxymoron that anybody can come up with. You have all this criminality going on, and the solution is let them out of jail and get rid of the police. Private sector brings an incredible tool to the ground, and I think that Blackwater, again, typified. Triple Canopy is another one. They proved the ability to buttress the U.S. government where needed. And what people don't understand, Mark, is that, we had hundreds of guys like you, former Marines, former SEALs, former Green Berets, former pararescuemen in Blackwater at the pointy end. And yeah, people go like, well, but they're making $700 a day or whatever hell it was. But they don't get TRICARE. They don't get, they don't get PX privileges from being in Iraq or Afghanistan. So the same thing applies to the physical security of our nation. Let's face it, the world has always been a dangerous place. From Attila the Hun on down, we've always been under some threat. And you have to be able to build the capabilities, private or otherwise, that support us. And I believe that every American has the responsibility to protect himself and his family. So Absolutely. I have a friend of mine who's a very dear friend of mine who has done extremely well in providing armed in badged personnel during times of emergency, like, to the Gulf when you have hurricanes or earthquakes or tornadoes. And that is a perfect business for the guys. This comes up, he can send badged guys off duty or former officers that have HR 218 privileges and get them on the ground and protect the infrastructure and the people that are trying to restore whatever. So there is a niche for that. And I think there always has been. That one of the big things for Eric was always talking about the contractors in history, from Lafayette on down that made a difference in this country.
Yeah, there'll never be never be a lack of work or operators or EP agents or practitioners. Like you said, I mean, I'm watching more news release on CNBC, layoffs coming. Everybody's cutting budgets right now, getting ready for the recession. What do you think on the recession? Do you think we're going to be hit with it pretty hard?
Well, I mean, I'm not an economist, and I don't follow. I actually pay a guy to manage the little money that I have saved, and it's evaporating pretty quickly. But you just stated a little earlier. When my two of my kids bought their first house, they got 2.5% interest rates. The interest rate right now is over 6.5%, and my son was telling me the other day, he says, Dad, there's no way that I could afford to buy this little townhouse today because it's 3 times more interest that I have to pay than what I did with when I bought it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was. So are we going to get hit with inflation? Yes, I'm pretty sure of that. But back to the security angle that you were touching on. Yes, I think there always will be a place and a growing necessity for us to have additional protection than what just our law enforcement sheepdogs, who I'm a big fan of. I've worked with them here. I'm part of the FOP. So private sector is a big tool also in the security equation here.
Have you worked much? Yeah, Blackwater, you ran that whole operation for Eric, and that I'm sure that was probably an amazing experience helping him run that company. And I know he sold out a couple of times, it's been bought out a couple of times, and for the contracts, I'm sure. And I think isn't he doing stuff in Africa now with the foreign?
Yeah, unfortunately for Eric, he became the only connectivity to the past administration. And he made the mistake of being a little bit vociferous about his political views, which is one of the reasons I don't talk politics. I learned that in watching him. But here you have a guy who created an incredible mechanism that everybody that he served in the community were grateful for what they brought to the table. And now they started getting prosecuted and persecuted just because of their political, affiliations and stuff like that. So we do need to maintain that capability. We all wish, especially guys like you and me who've been in harm's way. God, we don't want that for our kids.
No,
I don't want that for my grandkids.
No way.
But unfortunately, my grandparents didn't want me to be in harm's way either. And there you go. It's as the world turns kind of thing. The day that people realize that there is a threat out there and that they are responsible, whether it's financially hiring, people like from your firm, that's you could be a great businessman, but if you're not a gun guy, how do you protect your family? You reach out to the professionals, you hire them, you treat them well, you pay them well, and these guys will put down their lives for you.
Right. I got a question for you. What do you see as lacking in the executive protection, close protection space in the United States from a domestic standpoint? You oversaw Blackwater overseas, but what are the comparisons? What do you see that's lacking that could be better in the United States?
I really don't know much about that part of the out of the business. Like I mentioned, with my years with Blackwater, even though I did help them with the WPPS stuff and WHIP stuff, was overseas operations, and because of my agency background, as you know, the agency cannot operate in the United States. So,
Oh, I did not know that.
yeah, the CIA is prohibited from working in the United States. Now, there's things that we can do jointly, like with the FBI or Secret Service or whatever it is. We can recruit in the United States, but it all has to be coordinated with another federal agency. We don't have, we cannot be going out here pitching Americans and stuff like that. It's illegal.
Now, here's a question. So let's say I get a mission, right? And I got to go to Italy. Do I need to go to the embassy and check in Italy if I'm a CIA operator and let them know I'm on their turf? How does that usually work?
You don't have to, because as a civilian, you can go where the hell you want. It's another great benefit of being an American. Nobody can tell you that.
Right.
You cannot go to China, and no, you cannot go to Italy. I think it's smart, if you're a professional, to touch base with the embassy, develop relationships with the RSO, the regional security officers, who are the security arm for State Department and for every embassy out there. Embassies maintain a very robust roster of who's in country, because they're when an embassy goes into a NEO, an evacuation or an emergency, they're not only responsible for the State Department and the agencies that are in that building, they're responsible for every American in that country. So working PSDs overseas, I would invest very heavily in establishing relationships with the diplomatic security guys and even my agency in some cases.
Wow, that's good intel to know. I did not know that. That's how it worked over there. What were some of your roughest times in the CIA? Did you have times where you're like in fear of your life at any moment when on different missions, or you're afraid you get taken out? Any stories like that?
Well, yeah, and there's probably half a dozen that they'd let me write about in the book. Training is a beautiful thing, because if you train right, you will fight right. I think that I was always scared shitless after something happened, because especially in my world, like a law enforcement officer, we're reacting to a threat. We're not out there, so you don't have time. And when it was regular operations, like when I was in the Contra program and living in the camps of with the Contras against the Sandinistas, there were a couple of close calls in there. We did get ambushed a couple of times. But when that happens, me and the guys around me, you reacted, you go back to your training, and then you survived it. There's a saying that life first tests you and then it teaches you. Mm-hmm. So when you survive anything, you go back and go, oh shit, what could I have done different? I'm glad I got away with that, kind of thing. One of the scariest one that and it's in the book, is when I was in the Philippines. We were helping the Filipino Special Forces guys and the Navy guys fight the NPA. The New People's Army they had just killed Nick Rowe a few months before I make it into country. Legendary Green Beret. He was part of the Just Mag there, the military presence, and we were in a town called Davao. It was 6 of us, 2 Filipino Army officers, 2 techs that were American, and me and my colleague Davis Knowlton. And there was after Nick Rowe was killed, there was also 2 or 3 assassinations in the Angeles area outside of Clark Air Force Base, and these hits were being done by a group called the Sparrows. These guys were specially trained for assassination. And what they did was and there's a video, you could actually YouTube NPA Sparrows, and it's a sobering video when they show this guy that was captured and decided to cooperate. They carry a 45 caliber 1911 A1 in their belt, no holster, They hold it up with their left hand.
Hmm.
What they do is they push the gun up, come up, shoot you, put it back down. And when that shot goes off, people looks at who got shot. So they developed this reputation as being ghosts.
Wow.
So, but what happened to us was we went, after a long day, we went to have dinner and a beer, and we're coming out of the establishment, and the two Filipino Army guys go out. They don't notice anything. My two techs go out. They don't notice anything. But me and Davis was a Vietnam vet, Army infantry guy. And as soon as I walk out, I see there's three guys standing in a little huddle. And as soon as we came out, they made eye contact with us. They got three in line and started walking in front of us. The guy on the left and the guy on the right both had their left hands in their pocket. And the guy in the middle was looking at us.
Wow.
I drew my weapon immediately. Unbeknownst to me, so did Davis, because you've been in there. When stuff like happens, paratrooper exclusion, you get tunnel vision.
Tunnel vision. Yeah.
I'm looking at these guys. But here's how I know these guys were who they were. If you're a civilian, they're just minding your own business, and all of a sudden you have a pistol pointed at you for no reason whatsoever, there's a reaction. Whoa, what's going on? Is this, I'm being robbed? No, these guys never even winked. Here you have two guns pointed at you at 15 meters. And the guy in the middle just kept looking at me, and not unbeknownst to me, Davis also. And I could read his mind. I'll get you next time. And I'm going like, no, you ain't. But I will tell you, if me and Davis had not noticed these guys, you and I wouldn't be talking. I am convinced of that.
It better shot you.
Well, the moral of the story is awareness beats fast draw every single time.
What a story. And they're called the Sparrows of the Philippines.
Sparrows, NPA, No People's Army Sparrows.
Are they SF trained at that level, or just?
No, they're just terrorists. I mean, they're highly trained at what they do. These guys were specifically chosen. Most of them were young. They look like they were in their early 20s.
Wow. Okay.
But they were trained for just that thing, assassination. That was the job of the Sparrows, was to assassinate the MPA's targets in urban areas.
But they know who you guys were.
Oh yeah.
Wow, that's wild. So when they got a bio of Rick, and they knew you're coming in town.
Well, not necessarily a bio, but look, they have their intel sources, just like everybody has their intel sources, and they're not stupid either. They know that there are gringos on the ground helping the Philippine government fight them. So, the old riddle me this: what is the most vulnerable point in that? The Filipinos or the Americans helping them? You can neutralize that American presence there, all the training and all the technology and all this other stuff that's being provided by the U.S. government, in this case, the agency, is negated. So it's a very viable target. And in the Philippines, being Latino, I fit in a little bit more. But, the rest of my colleagues were, besides the Filipinos, were guys who were obviously European and not locals. So, they got their intel networks, and they knew that are in sources, and they were definitely targeting us. It wasn't an accident.
Have you had many situations? You said you have many stories like that all around the world, probably, of different operations you're on.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of the book, is that it highlights really sexy, exciting stuff, but it's real. It isn't Jason Bourne, a maniacal 17 personalities who goes into a room and takes on 3 experts and beats them all, and he's chemically enhanced and all this stuff. There are plenty of stories, not just of me. The book isn't just about my exploits. My colleagues, it's things that they have gone through, those kind of experiences. There's plenty of them, and they're all real.
Yeah, it's funny now. I watched a movie, and I'm always critiquing all these action movies like that just did not happen. There's no way that did not happen. Then my sister would go, Mark, you're ruining it. I'm like, that's Hollywood. It's so Hollywood.
My wife will not watch those kind of programs with me. Because he says, nobody does that. Nobody wraps the pistol before going in the room. You know, you have a weapon in the chamber and you're an idiot. And it's a movie. I said, no, it's not a movie. It's a movie trying to tell me that this is reality. And that's what I resent. Like I said, James Bond movies I love because I know it's fantasy.
Fantasy. He caught into that. Now, here's the question. I think, this is my personal opinion, I think the CIA is the most powerful agency in the world, even more powerful than the president. That's just my opinion. I don't know if there's any other agencies around the world that are as big.
It can be in a certain way and in a certain niche. Going back to what I said earlier, we do not operate in the United States. We are not allowed to operate in the United States. So it's oranges and apples. I mean, compare the FBI to the CIA, completely different. Law enforcement to the CIA. Regular law enforcement is probably more tuned with us because they both have the same ungrateful mistress that we serve. It is a force to be reckoned with, is something that this country cannot afford not to have. And like I told our director when I started my last programs at the end of my career, which again are in the book, I said, you know, we cannot be the premier service to the most important, most influential country in the world and not have these kind of tools in our toolbox. And that's what the agency is. It's just a tool in that big toolbox. And, I think that unfortunately, but it's a reality, we cannot advertise 1/10 of any of the things that we do. I mean, you will see in my book, there's a lot of blacked out stuff. Sure. I'm actually surprised, of what they did leaving, like me briefing the vice president and all that other stuff and the concept of that operation. But because of sources and methods, protecting sources and methods, we're hamstrung compared to some of the other agencies. The big joke with us was always be, FBI could have Ruby Ridge today, but tomorrow they shoot Dillinger, and people only remember that they're the ones that shot Dillinger. Right. We have a flap today. Everybody knows about it. Tomorrow we recruit Putin's secretary, and we can't tell anybody. So, yeah. Not that I say that we have, by the way.
A disclaimer.
I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, I hear that. But what's interesting, you just mentioned what Michael Trott went through was the CIA had to go through his book and do their editing and make sure that he was approved. You had to do the same thing with the CIA with your book.
Absolutely. My book was in the process for well over 6 months, and that was with with substantial help from inside from people that believed in what I was doing. But yeah, it is illegal. We could actually go to jail if we write a book and start revealing secrets without the agency having approved what you're saying. Wow.
And so you went through a 6-month process just for approval before publication.
That's correct.
Dang. I don't know many authors that have that to be able to pull that off. Now, how long did it take you to write the book?
The book started a couple of years ago. Kofor Black was one of the people always pushing me on that. When I brought Kofor, like I said, I was the first guy at Blackwater, and Eric needed a senior face that wasn't doing my stuff in the streets. And so I helped him recruit, Kofor Black. And Kofor, God puts people in the right place at the right time. He was the perfect guy to be in the agency when 9/11 happened. So when he came over to Blackwater, his office and mine were like 2 doors apart. And he was always in my office, and almost every week, Rick, you need to write a book. And I said, I'm not interested in writing a book. My oldest son asked me to keep notes because he said, look, Dad, I see you debriefing. My dad lived with me for the last 5 years of his life. And I would sit there and debrief him. And my oldest son came to me and said, I ain't doing this. I know how painful this is for you. You need to write because we have no clue of what you've done. It's funny. I tell people my wife cuts me a lot more slack now because she didn't know 90% of what was in that book.
Wow.
So
what a trip.
So that was the beginning. I started keeping notes and fleshed out outlines. And then in a conversation with Kofor and a guy named Steve Cole, who's a writer, a very known Pulitzer Prize winner writer. They both said to me, look, you're always complaining about the bad reputation that your agency has and how badly your men and women are represented. You have a story that can give people a complete different view of the reality of our lives and the kind of people we have.
And that must have, I imagine, warmed your heart hearing that from people saying you had that ability to be a positive tool for the agency by publishing this.
Yeah. And like I said, I had the notes for personal family reasons because I understood what my kids were, and they were right. I mean, they have a right to know what daddy did during the wars. I mean, let's face it, that's part of our legacy. But yeah, having individuals prop me on that. And like I said, I did take very personal when I saw in the media, here I'm coming from a funeral and I'm watching the CIA being maligned, and we just buried one of our guys and nobody knows about it. That's so. I think that was the impetus for me.
Do you grandkids consider you like a modern day superhero after your book?
Well, my oldest grandson is 18. My youngest grandson is 3 weeks old. So I know the older one looks at me and we talk, and we're very close. But I'd never felt good with that hero legend kind of stuff. And people go, "Well, you're just trying to be humble." I said, "No, you have to understand. Throughout my career, whether it was in pararescue or at the CIA or at Blackwater, I was surrounded by giants. Dewey Claridge's of the world, pararescue Wayne Fisk of the world, agency Special Forces Billy Waugh, who's a dear friend of mine to this day. I walked in the shadow of giants, and that keeps you humble. That keeps you grounded. Yeah, I don't believe in that hero. I've had this discussion with Billy because Billy, even at 93, he thinks he hasn't done enough. And I always ask him, Billy, you tell me a guy that thinks that they have done enough for God and country. They haven't.
Interesting.
Most real warriors never feel like they've done enough.
It's like a brotherhood of servanthood, servant leadership almost. We're just in our DNA to serve.
That's what we're wired to do.
Like you said, you were surrounded by giants when you got in the agency. You're surrounded by people that you looked up to, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they gave me time of day. Wow.
Indeed. Very humbling.
Who was your favorite president you worked for? Not being political, just have a personality you really enjoyed being around.
Reagan.
Okay.
Ronald Reagan was a visionary. That's what got me into the agency. When he took power, he immediately tasked the agency that we needed to start fighting the communist agenda that was going on from the Soviet Union via Cuba, Nicaragua being one of the points, Salvador being another, and then, of course, Bolivia and some of these other places. I think Reagan had one big advantage that other presidents haven't had. They had John Paul II as the Pope, and he had Mary Thatcher as his main ally.
Right.
That's a hell of a trifecta. But Reagan is one of the guys. My diplomatic credentials. Well, when you go undercover under State Department, you actually get a real diplomatic accreditation. And mine was signed by Ronald Reagan.
How cool is that?
That was in my mom's living room until the day that she passed. That was her biggest pride. She totally adored Ronald Reagan. So, yeah.
But he was the most gifted orator in U.S. history.
Yes, without a doubt.
Man, just to have been around him for a 4-year term, and that must have been something, take to you till eternity. Is just that experience. And the guy was never in military, never served, but Hollywood actor turned president. And he actually won. He actually won presidency with my Roger Stone was on my podcast. And Roger Stone helped lead his election process in California. We just finished about an hour and a half long conversation, and we're going to probably wrap this up and have Rick share any parting words that he has for the audience, any advice, any thoughts of hope, inspiration. Love to hear it.
Well, I think we've talked about all the things that are the big ticket items that we should be focusing on. But I just want to take this opportunity to thank you because, you are doing a hell of a mission for all of us, getting the voice out there, getting individuals like Mike Trot out there. And thank you. I hope you continue to do this successfully because this is a good educational tool for the average American that all they can see is, CBS or Fox with all the, talking heads telling you what this means. So I thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It means a lot. What I've discovered in my podcast host journey is the biggest growing media segment right now that is exploding is podcasting.
Yes.
The reason why is nobody trusts the information they're getting from the news outlet anymore. They don't want to hear it. They don't believe in it. Even Google has lost its ranking as the #1 search engine. I found this out by my podcast team. I couldn't believe it when they told me that Instagram is the #1 search engine on the internet. Next to, I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I'm not a big fan, but TikTok is the second ranked platform, most search platform. Like TikTok, are you serious? But it's crazy. But it's been an honor to have icons like yourself. I know you don't consider yourself an icon, but a servant, patriot to this country. And he's almost become your professor because you just wrote a book. And a lot of professors in college, guess what they do? They write books. And then they
hope
teach
I
on
can educate. I hope I could educate a few people into certain realities. And I'm very proud of that effort. And the book has been very popular, I think. And like I said, the biggest compliments is the feedback that I get from people saying, hey, I gifted this to my son, or thank you for representing us in a realistic light. So, but I do appreciate the airtime and I thank you. We could always do this again.
Oh, yeah. There's going to be more issues coming up. And you're a CI. I consider you a subject matter expert because you worked in the CI for most of your career and you did a lot of things. And yeah, I'm sure you're going to be busy we'll see you on the network news here pretty soon, probably giving your talks if you haven't done it yet.
I was on Channel 9 Chicago yesterday. And of course, I've done the Fox News and I've done several others and TMZ even. If I done
TMZ of all people, really?
Yeah, it was fun. That was actually fun.
Who's your favorite interviewer? Have you, which reporter journalist have you enjoyed talking with the most?
My big first break and the first, which was actually negotiated by the publisher, was CBS Sunday Morning.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And it was 27 February 2021. I'm sorry, 2022, when the book came out the following day. And, that team was just super professional. They did a really good job. You could find that on YouTube and everything else, CBS Sunday Morning, 27 Feb. And I think that was one of the great ones. Another one that I thoroughly enjoyed, and it was a TV interview with a guy named Tom Marshall. He's the editor for Recoil magazine.
I heard of that.
Yeah. And I did a really good piece there. And they did a 6-page spread on this month's Recoil magazine on Rick Prado and Black Ops.
Congratulations. That's a big deal, Recoil.
It is.
You're getting all kinds of publicity on this thing.
If it helps the book, I'm going to do it. So
if anybody asked you to do a movie, would you?
We are working. There's a team that is working for that. There's a group of actual known producers and stuff like that we're in pretty serious talks. And they're what they're really pushing for is a mini series based on kind of stuff. And the one thing that I told them right up front, I said, listen, this isn't about the money because there's 3 things that are sacrosanct. You're not going to be belittle my agency. You're not going to belittle my colleagues, and you're not going to turn one of my kids into either a drug addict or whatever it is, just for sensationalize. And they all agreed. They said, no, that's not what we want. We definitely, because they read the book, and that was the impetus. So, but these things take more than months.
Time.
Literally take months and months to get it approved, and and the beauty of it is that it's only about the book, so it's already cleared. So, but thank you.
So you probably can't disclose anything yet because it's all in talks.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. I'm excited to hear about that launch. So this will be probably more of a TV series, like maybe Netflix or something.
That's correct.
Something like that. Okay, cool.
Amazon, wow. Or whatever. Yeah.
I'm sure you tracked Jack Carr over there with the Terminalist.
Yeah, I actually know Jack. We've met, and he's done very well with that product. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
He's actually signed my book at the Ontic Summit. I met him and got a picture with him. Nicest guy.
Well, he's a decent dude. Right.
Awesome. Any parting words, or that's about all you got?
That's all I got, my friend. Thank you very much, and appreciate the opportunity to, tell you the world according to Prado.
Well, I think the audience is going to enjoy this. Again, folks, last plug, please look up Rick Prado and the Amazon and go order his book. And you can find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and all those sites, and Twitter, and follow him on those sites. I'm sure he'll be posting annually with his team. And please go to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star ranking for this show. We'd really appreciate it. And I'm going to throw this in on the 5th. Whoever puts in the 5th star rating on Apple Podcast is number 5. I'll send you a gift card of $100. So if you can do that for us, direct message me and we'll get you set up. So look forward to find out who that's going to be. And that's kind of a new thing I'm doing for this season. So thanks, folks, for listening. And you can find us on YouTube, under Mark Ludlow, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And thanks for supporting the show. And we've been on this thing for an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. And Rick's been just digesting and sharing his story of his book. And we're proud to have him on for this episode of The Fearless Mindset. And we'll see you on the next episode.